Hi there, I'm Scott Lowe with ActualTech Media, and we're happy to be here today at iGel's US headquarters. I'm joined by Simon Cleffin, who is the VP for Business Development and Strategic Alliances. Simon, thank you for having us in your offices today.
It is a pleasure to be here, Scott. Thanks for joining us.
So, we want to talk about end-user computing and VDI and virtual machines and thin clients, a whole bunch of stuff today. But let's start with a simple question that's sort of tongue-in-cheek, but one that I think people still need to understand, and that's, is this the year of VDI? I hate even asking you that, but the year of VDI is such an overused term. I hate it. But where do we really stand when in terms of VDI and end-user computing and desktops as a service and things like that?
Very good question. I actually recorded an interview a little while back and said, this is the year of VDI, but I was tongue-in-cheek. I don't actually believe that. VDI is maturing. The good news is that it is growing and it's going to be increasingly important. And I think the big change in VDI is going to be with DAS. DAS is the solution that is going to drive VDI across the board, and a lot of people will be adopting VDI under the aegis of DAS. Essentially, we're seeing Amazon and Azure and Google, and to some extent IBM for the enterprise, really driving desktop as a service onto the desktops for enterprise clients, and it's going to be a whole new wave. To be able to do that, they need essentially very powerful servers inside the data center. They need superb networking and internet connectivity, which we're seeing are maturing. And then the last mile, and I talk about it, is secure endpoints. And that's where iGel steps in. Our ability to deliver fast performing, highly secure, very well controlled endpoints is what iGel does. And that's what we've been focusing on.
What have been the really key roadblocks towards really the world of a more centralized end-user computing experience in the past?
So I would put that down to performance, performance, and performance. It's basically the end user is not achieving and is not seeing the performance they'd expect. And a lot of that has come down to the network hasn't been fast enough and they haven't been able to get access to the information that they want lightning fast the way they expect it on their own standard desktop. So what do they need? They need tools that basically deliver the power of the data center through the network to that desktop with very fast performance. And when I talk about performance, 9 times out of 10, that's graphics, making sure the graphics. And guess what? That problem's getting worse and worse. You go and talk to NVIDIA and people like that. They have studies that show the graphics requirements for an effective Windows 10 desktop is significantly higher than the old Windows 7 and certainly way more than the Windows NT desktop. And iGel's working hard with partners like NVIDIA and like AMD to tune our graphics performance so that we really can deliver a high quality end user experience. And basically customers press things and they happen instantly and they cannot detect the difference between the desktop and a VDI or a DAS solution. That's got to be the gold standard that we have to achieve.
And I think people who have deployed VDI in the past have forgotten that sometimes, that as soon as you deploy something where, well, it's good enough, it's not good enough. And if you as an administrator, and I've seen people do this, are testing it, and you're like, well, they'll have to live with that. They're not going to live with it. And there's, like you said, there's two places, well, there's more than two places, but two key places. One is graphics, but the other is the server side, generally storage. That's a solved problem today with Flash and stuff like that. Graphics, what's happening on the graphics front to try to get over that hurdle?
So for us, and actually we've just launched a whole new product line, an update to one of our core products, our UD3. We have a new AMD chipset inside there, which is giving us 4 cores and significantly improved performance. We've just launched a thing called a UD7, which is also based on a next generation AMD chipset that is giving us super powerful graphics, which will actually support up to 4 monitors, 2 of which can be 4K with 60 megahertz refresh rates. They are just superb graphics machines and give us really high quality graphics. But you're asking, how do we make sure that performance for the end user is equivalent and indeed better than what they were receiving on the original desktop? And the way we do that is we tune, and we spend a lot of time. We've got 75 engineers in Augsburg who essentially spend their time tuning the end user performance. We implement H.264 today. We're looking at how we implement H.265 for the future, and those are the things that are driving us forward. People like Citrix come out with their graphic standards, HDX, there's HDX 2D Pro, HDX Premium, and it is our avowed goal that we will support all of those capabilities to deliver high quality end user experience. VMware has the Blast Extreme protocol that is also pushing high performance graphics. We make sure that we support those because that is basically what the end user looks at and goes, this is crap, I'm not going to use this, and then guess what, the project fails. So that's our business, making sure the end user performance works, and it comes down to performance, performance, performance. And
when you talk about your partnerships with Citrix and VMware, how much at their mercy are you a little bit? I mean, because you've got to deal with Blast Extreme, are the limitations. Citrix has 3 different places you have to play. Like, what are the differences in some of those protocols, and how does it impact how you deploy and create your end user experience?
To be honest, it's just the world we live in. We have to be able to deliver and support those protocols. That is where the bulk of our business comes from. When I joined iGel, I actually wrote a blog about it, but I saw iGel as having sort of 3 potential growth paths or 3 areas where it plays. One is traditional VDI, and that's Citrix and VMware. And it's just table stakes to be able to deliver high quality VMware and high quality Citrix experience. We actually deliver a minimum of 3 versions of receiver inside our operating system, which, by the way, is packaged up here in something as small as this UD Pocket. Maybe we can do a close-up of it a little bit later. But 3 receiver versions. We also supply multiple versions of VMware's Blast Extreme. That's VDI. Beyond that, I see as the next wave of VDI, and maybe it's the same thing, but I think of it slightly different, as DAS. Mm-hmm. It's Amazon, I've mentioned it before, it's Amazon, Azure, Google, and IBM are the leaders in that market, and they will drive that forward. We're seeing them driving the DAS market. That will require high performance graphics, and they will come up with their own protocols to make the very best out of their solutions. And then lastly, it's IoT. Funnily enough, iGel has this small 1.3 gigabyte operating system that will pretty much run on anything these days. A memory, close memories, RAM's not that expensive. We can control and manage tens of hundreds of thousands of devices very effectively. So we're seeing IoT drop in here.
So when we think about the cloud and the piece that is really critical, especially when we start talking about DAS, what is the, you're basically closing the endpoint gap. When people think about cloud, they don't think hardware. Correct. But hardware is still a critical component in a cloud environment. And you're helping close the desktop gap, the end user computing device gap, even when we start talking about DAS with living in Amazon or Azure, Google, or IBM.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So I think the important thing to remember here is that we have the technology pieces to do this today. We have all the powerful data centers, and Lord knows we've seen the size of Google and Facebook and Amazon's data centers. So they have the processing power, they have the storage capabilities. The network is coming. I'm looking forward to a 5G world. We can argue till we're blue in the face about when that's going to arrive, but it will help.
It will.
And the network is becoming ubiquitous. Mm-hmm. So people are able to access, on the plane. It used to be you got a moment's respite when you're on the plane and you could sit back, but not anymore. I just flew in from Europe yesterday and they had internet service the whole time for the whole 10 hours on the damn flight. It spoils my whole life. And then the last part is the endpoint. I want to stress here that there is something that is going on in the planet that we need to be very, very careful about, and it's security. The security at the endpoint, because that is the attack point. 9 times out of 10, the attack comes not in the data center, not on the network, it comes at the endpoint. That's where they gain access to the passwords. They put a keylogger on, they have a screen scraper, they have various technologies for grabbing what you need. The DAS world today is just basically saying, well, we don't mind what you do, just put it on a browser. Guess what? those browsers are terribly, terribly leaky and very, very dangerous for anybody to access your information and get control. iGel is building a whole program to build highly secure browsers, controlled encrypted signals between the device and their network, so that we can absolutely control who is seeing what, where they're seeing it, how they're seeing it, and you can pretty much guarantee that no one is going to be looking over your shoulder.
I don't think that can be overstated enough in the world we live in. When you hear about some of the things that have happened and how people have managed to gain access into systems,
Right.
People's enterprises and organizations are porous, and it's a job of every service to be able to resist a little bit.
Absolutely, and we're not saying this is the be-all and end-all of everything in security. Security is layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of capabilities. But today, the number one attack point is the browser on the desktop. And if we can write a more secure operating system to manage that browser and make sure that browser is only doing the things that it's supposed to be doing and that no one can infiltrate it and pull information from it, then everybody is safer, which will help us with the delivery of the DAS solution. And not only that, if we tune it for performance, then everybody will be better off.
Simon, thank you so much for having us in your offices today.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Scott.
And thank you to our audience for watching this Roadcast video.